Hey, Scott, can you tell us a little about your airplane?
I'd love to, Kent. Kent, this is a 1959, and it's a Bellanca Cruisemaster, or it's a Bellanca 14-19-3, or it's a Bellanca 260. They were called various things by various people, and it's technically not a Bellanca. In 1959, a company called Downer bought the company from Bellanca, and they changed the design of the airplane from a tail dragger, to a nose wheel. And this is the second nose wheel that was built. And I think there was 127 of the nose wheels built before they went out of business in 1963. Now, when they made this a nose wheel, they simply turned the landing gear around from swinging backwards, mounting the landing gear up front, to mounting the landing gear in the back and swinging frontwards to get the center of gravity right. That's why if you look at the tail end of this airplane, which we will in a little bit, you'll see that the tail skid, which is still there, it's only about 6-8 inches off the ground. So when you taxi, you can't really see much out of the window until you get up in the air. When you're up in the air, the tail of this airplane literally goes up about 6 feet to get into level flight. And then whenever it goes up into level flight, you cannot see the cowl out of the window. That all disappears. So what Downer did, whenever they went from a tail to a nose, they also changed the engine from a fuel or carbureted 470 to a fuel injected 470. Raised the horsepower from 230 up to 260. So this is a 260 horsepower, which way they called it a Bellanca 260. But in the record books at the FAA, it said Downer 1419-3, and that's the length and the width, the square footage of the wing. The 14-19-3 is the nose wheel. The wing is made out of wood. There's actually wood spars, and they are made out of Sitka spruce, somewhat modeled after the spruce goose. And there's an argument whether Howard Hughes took Bellanca theory, which he built wood wings forever, and they were always a Sitka spruce with a mahogany wrap. And then once they're wrapped with mahogany, then you put fabric on it, and then you UV protect the fabric, and then you put primer, and then you put paint on. So building these wings is about a 5 or 6 step process. To date, as far as I know, there's never been a wood wing failure in the Bellanca fleet. They literally have proven the test of time that they live a lifetime. There's no, if you keep them dry, the wood will outlast metal, aluminum. So this is really a lifetime wing unless you set it out and soak it in the rain. And then it becomes a sponge, and then it becomes rot, and it's just junk. This particular airplane was built and sold to a flight school up in San Diego. They flew it for 3 years, put 722 hours on it, sold it to a rancher, imagine that, in Fallon, Nevada. The rancher apparently flew it one time, and whenever he flew it, somehow he tipped the prop, put it in the back of his hangar. It never flew again. I had a partner in this whenever we bought it. We learned about it in about 2000. I was living in Reno. We went out to Fallon, asked around. Airport manager says, I think it's in one of these hangars. And he said, I'll get you in contact with the estate. They live up in Washington. So we contacted the estate. Took them a while to respond, and we said we'd like to take a look at it. We're interested in buying it. And the estate says, well, there's been various people over the years, they want to buy it, but they always want to steal it from us. My partner was career military until he retired. Then he became a FedEx pilot. But he was a patriot, true and true from the heart. He says, I don't like the word steal. He says, we will not steal this airplane from you. If you want to sell it, you kids get together and you put a number on it. And we're going to say yes or no. That number's not going to be a negotiable. There won't be a back and forth. So that way you kids will feel like you got the right amount of money out of the airplane. So a month goes by and they call us back. And we didn't know what to expect. The airplane hadn't been flown in 35 years. It was full of bugs and rat poop and spider webs, but it was all there. It was in pristine condition. The kid says we want $10,000 for it. John and I looked at each other and we both did a thumbs up. We were on the phone, $5,000 each. We bought the airplane. He was an A&P and an IA. So we went out and we worked weekends, we changed hoses, we drained fuel, we made the airplane flyable, got a ferry permit and flew it from Fallon, Nevada into Stead, Reno, Nevada. Had a hangar there. We totally disassembled it, ripped the fabric off. We were down to the metal tube frame. We recoated the frame. All the wood that's underneath, everything has been off of this airplane and put back together. And we were about 3 or 4 years into the project. We were working nights and weekends, and he was a full-time pilot. I had a business, so this was a hobby. And he went on a FedEx flight, brain aneurysm, fell dead in a cabin up in New York, his parents' cabin. And I ended up with an airplane. And I had a decision to make because we were, 10, 20, 30% done. We're working on it. We're moving forward. We're having a great time. But I was not an A&P and I was not an IA. I was an automatic transmission rebuilder. So I had mechanical skills, but I made the decision to finish the airplane because we had a deal with each other. And it was kind of one of those deals. We're drinking beer one night in the hangar, and one of us said, well, what happens if one of us dies? And John says, well, if you die, I'll finish the airplane. And he says, if I die, you finish the airplane. I found an individual to help me do the fabric, he had a guy that would do the paint. My avionics shop there in Reno did all the wiring in the panel that you'll see. And then I had an engine rebuilder in Indiana do the engine. I had to buy a brand new prop because the prop had tips bent off of it. And other than that, the airplane there was nothing catastrophic wrong. There was no rust, there was no rot. It was a fairly easy restoration. But the restoration, after John passed away, I turned it into a modernization. I want, at that time, pretty much as much glass panel as I could afford. I wanted an autopilot, had never been approved. I wanted the 3-blade prop, never been approved. I wanted a JPI engine monitor, never been approved. So we ended up with over 20 STCs, or field approvals.
Wow.
On getting the airplane put together. And that alone was a process that I didn't understand like I do now. I learned how to get through that process pretty easily. It just takes people and communication and relationships, and you can get just about anything done that makes sense. One of the things that I found that I'll share with you, Kent, is that while I was doing this restoration, I got to become pretty close friends with what was left of the factory up in Alexandria, Minnesota. And literally it was a bunch of old guys. I understand whenever I started this, I was 50 and they were old, they're my age. But they shared their knowledge, their history, and I learned so much about this airplane, or actually most of the Bellancas. These taillets were put on primarily to get away from the stigma of stall spin losing control. They don't really do much, but they sure look cool.
They do look cool. I like the looks.
Yeah, they sure look cool. The tail is small, don't have a lot of rudder authority, so in a real crosswind, this airplane's a handful. And it's got a stall speed of 50 miles an hour, so you got to get slow to get it to land, and you don't have a lot of rudder, so a crosswind, you got to be on the game, or you've got a problem. Because you can lose it pretty quickly. They kept the flying wires top and bottom. It's structurally so sound that if you go on the internet, you'll see the Bellanca Viking actually doing loops, spins, barrel rolls. It's not certified for inverted flight or aerobic flight, but it will actually do that. They didn't certify it for one reason. I asked them, if it'll do it, why didn't you certify it? And they said we didn't want people doing it and killing themselves in the airplane and ruining the Bellanca reputation. So that's why it was never certified.
Totally makes sense, doesn't it?
Now, if you look at this taillet close, it has no rudder trim tab on it. So what you do is you change the angle of the taillet versus having a trim tab on the rudder to make the airplane go straight and level flight. And that's just a trial and error. Right now, this is about an 1/8 of an inch out on the front, which gives it just that much of a tilt Same on the other side. That way you don't have to have a trim tab. This airplane, literally, you can go to sleep in it. It just goes straight.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I learned something on
Yeah.
every video.
There
Wow.
you go. There you go. So coming on around, flaps on this go literally almost straight down.
Wow.
Don't need them. I land with half flaps, because with a full flap and a stall speed of 50 mile an hour, you can just get the airplane too slow. In flight, if you do a power off stall, it literally won't stall and flip over. You can get it down to 20 mile an hour and the airplane just basically will hover and almost go straight down into the ground.
It mushes.
It just mushes. It won't fall over. We've tried and you can't get this thing to go inverted. It won't happen. So they did something right when they built this, and nobody really knows what it is.
Well, I've always been told nothing flies like a Bellanca.
I've told that too, and I owned a 182 for a number of years before I had an incident in it back in the early 80s. I actually had an engine failure on takeoff back when they were having water in the fuel. I got involved in that loop with the FAA and the NTSB, and I had an engine failure on takeoff up in Steamboat Springs, Hayden, Colorado. And I went through a power line, pulled the wing off, pulled the engine off, tore the fuselage up, and by the grace of God, I lived through it. So I can still build airplanes and tell stories just because I got lucky.
Yes.
Yeah, anyway, let's come around here. I want to show you something. I was in the middle of doing an improvement on the airplane. Whenever we decided to do this video, I wanted to put the Wayland LED strobes on it versus the old bulb. So whenever we rebuilt this airplane, this is what was on there. And it had a light bulb out here. So this came off. We cut that out, sanded that out, and put the first generation of strobes. I wanted to upgrade to an LED strobe, so I've kept that for 20 years.
And this is what the wing looks like. That's how it's built.
This is how it was built. It's Sitka spruce, mahogany wrap, and then fabric and paint on top of that. These were hand built, all glued together, and there's some staples in there. So it was glued and stapled. And like I said earlier, to my knowledge, there's never been a wing failure or a structural failure on a Bellanca. This airplane, built in '59, I have 2 ADs. So, you know, whenever you have 2 ADs, it's almost like the P-51, which I understand doesn't have any.
Yeah.
They did something right to only have 2 ADs 65 years later. So, because these are handmade airplanes, every piece that you buy to put on it, you have to fit. And I'm in the middle of fitting the new lenses that go on here. They come oversized, and you basically have to sand and form fit every piece on this airplane because they were hand built. They weren't factory built, and everyone's just a little bit different.
So this is a real craftsman machine.
It turns into a labor of love. And you either need to have a lot of money to pay somebody or be able to do this easy stuff yourself. Because this is stuff that I can do, and then I can have my APIA, he overlooks. He was just here a little bit ago. He watches me do it, and then he signs my logbook. But this kind of stuff is something that I can do. And I love doing it. There's the new Wayland landing lights that I just put in. I've done everything I can to modernize the airplane. It's not original, but the bones are, but the features and functions aren't. And I fly at 100, 150 hours a year. We go cross country quite often in 10.5 gallons an hour, 175 to 180 mile an hour. So it's very efficient.
That's an efficient airplane.
Yeah, I've got 65 gallons of gas. So I've got a 4 to 5 hour flight time in it, which is further than I can go. So we typically go 3 hours and 3.5 hours wherever we're going, stop, gas it up, use the boys and girls room, have lunch, and keep going. But I've done 3-hour legs a number of times in this airplane, and it's really comfortable Once you're in it, it's kind of like getting into a sports car. Once you're in, it's comfy. Getting in and out, it's kind of like, you know, it's a little bit dicey. But on the other hand, it keeps you limber. And as I get older, I need to be limber. Here's the 3-blade prop. And I elected to go with the MT, which is a wood prop. And the reason I had to go with an MT is, as I was talking with the FSDOs and wanting to put a 3-blade on, they said we'll entertain a 3-blade as long as it does not weigh more than the 2-blade. If it weighs more than the 2-blade, adds weight to the front, we're going to make you go through all sorts of certification. Not that it can't be done, but it says you'll have to have flight tests and noise tests and this and that and the other. So he said, we'll entertain a 3-blade. So I contacted MT, and they said, we have an individual that'll do the field approval for us. And so I was able to go from an 82-inch to a 76-inch 3-blade, which gives me more ground clearance, it's quieter, and it's smoother. I think I give up a little bit of top end by going to a 3 versus a 2, but I gained the climb performance on this on any given day. It's 1,000 feet a minute climb. If I need 1,000 or want 1,000, I typically climb at 110 mile an hour, which gives me about 800 feet a minute climb. And I can do that right up to 10, 11, 12,000 feet.
That's a very efficient airplane.
It's very efficient, yeah. The load carrying capacity, it's a small fuselage. I've never had a weight problem. It's a great 2-place airplane with baggage, and you're at gross or maybe a little bit more, but it performs the same empty as it does full. I can't really tell any difference. I designed the panel myself.
It's a beautiful panel. I really like it.
I sat in here for many hours and decided how I wanted it. And then I took it to an individual over in California, and he cut the panel. We did all the paperwork to get it approved. This had originally an old fiberglass panel in it. Like maybe Fred Flintstone built it. There was no rhyme or reason why any instrument was in the position it was in. It was almost like, okay, grab a hole saw, let's put it here. Let's grab a hole saw and let's put it there. So we took the fiberglass panel out, put the new modern panel in, and at the same time I was able to put in new modern yokes. This originally had yokes that were literally upside down. They were
yes, I've seen those.
Yeah.
They're really funky.
Yeah, they're really funky. They were comfortable, but I didn't have the ability to put push-to-talk and autopilot in those old yokes.
Yeah.
So I wanted push-to-talk and autopilot in the yokes, so I put those in.
And you set up the throttle and the prop and the mixture beautifully.
Yep.
Right in the middle.
Yep. And that's these originally were they were just spattered on the panel, and like I said, I sat in the old seat for hours, and I would draw, design, build cardboard, put it in, didn't like it, move it around. I bet I had 6 months of fiddling around to get the panel the way I wanted, but it's very, very comfortable.